Why would a country start a war not with missiles but with taxes? What if one man's mission to protect American jobs ended up shaking the entire global economy? And what if the fight never really ended? To find out, watch this video till the end, because what you're about to see isn't just history, it's a story still unfolding today. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Rise and Fall of Nations, and let's begin. Before Trump, the US was a champion of free trade. From the 1980s onward, tariffs had steadily declined. Deals like NAFTA, the WTO, and agreements with South Korea, Canada, and Mexico opened borders, boosted imports, and gave American consumers cheap goods. But not everyone benefited. While Wall Street soared, American factories closed, towns hollowed out. Rust Belt workers lost jobs to automation and cheaper labor abroad. By the time Trump ran for president in 2016, anger was boiling. He promised a new era, America first, a war not with bombs but with tariffs. Once in office, Trump acted fast. He targeted China, accusing it of stealing American jobs, intellectual property, and flooding US markets with cheap goods. In 2018, he imposed 25% tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese imports, later expanding them to cover over $360 billion. China hit back with its own tariffs, targeting soybeans, pork, and cars, US exports that mattered politically. But it didn't stop there. Trump slapped tariffs on steel and aluminum from allies like Canada, Mexico, and the EU, claiming national security reasons. He threatened more on European cars, Japanese goods, and even French wine. Suddenly, America was in a trade war, not just with rivals, but with its own allies. The consequences came fast. US farmers, especially in the Midwest, were crushed by Chinese tariffs. Prices collapsed. The government paid over $28 billion in subsidies to offset their losses, more than the US spent bailing out the auto industry in 2008. American manufacturers were hit too. Companies reliant on imported parts, like Harley-Davidson and GM, faced higher costs, supply chain confusion, and foreign retaliation. Many shifted production overseas to avoid tariffs. Consumers saw rising prices on everything from washing machines to whiskey. Globally, markets wobbled, investment slowed, and economic uncertainty spread like a virus. Supporters argued the tariffs forced countries, especially China, to negotiate more fairly. In 2020, Trump signed a Phase 1 deal with China. Beijing agreed to buy more US goods and strengthen intellectual property protections. But critics say the deal fell short. Many targets were never met, and China continued subsidizing its industries. Meanwhile, American consumers paid billions more due to the tariffs, and studies showed that while some jobs were saved, others were lost, especially in export-driven sectors. Even Trump's own advisors were divided. Some saw it as a necessary reset, others called it economic self-harm. China, after being hit hard, began reshaping its strategy. It sought stronger ties with Europe, Latin America, and Africa. It doubled down on Made in China 2025, trying to become self-reliant in key technologies. The EU retaliated with tariffs on American goods, from bourbon to Harley-Davidsons. Canada and Mexico pushed back, but eventually renegotiated NAFTA into USMCA, though trust had eroded. Other nations, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, Brazil, seized the opportunity. They lured investment away from China and into their own economies, becoming key players in the new supply chain world. Even under President Biden, many of Trump's tariffs remain, but the strategy has shifted toward targeted investment, subsidies for semiconductors, clean energy, and rebuilding domestic industry. As of 2025, the tariff war is not over. The US recently imposed new tariffs on Chinese EVs and solar panels, citing unfair subsidies and security risks. China is retaliating. Europe, too, is preparing to tax Chinese electric cars, fearing a flood of cheap imports. A quiet protectionism is spreading across the globe. Nations want supply chain independence, domestic resilience, and less reliance on any one partner, especially China or the US. The rules of global trade are being rewritten. Not with treaties, but with tariffs, industrial policy, and quiet economic nationalism. Trump's tariff war started as a crusade to save American jobs. It became a global earthquake. Alliances were strained, economies were bruised, and the world learned a painful truth. Trade wars have no winners, only survivors. Today the war continues, not in headlines, but in policy, production lines, and quiet retaliation. The battle lines have shifted, but the fight is far from over. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the rise and fall of nations.